But the gospel is saying there's some who are first that shall be last, and last shall be first. So there is this flip that's happening, that you were in his company, but now you're the alien. Right. You're the outside, and that those who were deemed outside are now welcome to the banquet.
So where does one find the proper pronunciations for places like Tarshish, Put, and Lud?
There's actually a book that you can get. It's like lectionary reading.
Yeah.
And then you can also find them online. That's what I would do whenever I had to read.
When I see the readings, sometimes and there's like a bunch of different countries and names and stuff. Yeah. And I see the lector go up. I'm always like, here we go. Oh, yes. See if they got it.
Yeah, I'm like, I hope you did your homework because you're about to. When I was in seminary, I had to do that once. I was assigned to a parish. I mean, it was the Old Testament cycle for the daily readings, which we're in right now. And there was one, it was brutal. There was like five to 8 words that were just wild, multisyllabic kind of words. But yeah, that's what's happening. Well, it's not what's happening, but it's we have in our first reading for the 21st Sunday of Ordinary Time from Isaiah many strange names from far off countries. Perhaps that's important for us. The strange name equals foreign country.
Right.
It's not one of the nations that is familiar to Israel, maybe. So the clear connection that the first reading and the gospel that the lectionary is trying to give us is that there is an eschatological banquet at the end of time. And there will be unexpected guests at the table, I guess you could say. So in Isaiah, God is saying that he will gather all these foreign nations together that have never heard of my fame or seen my glory, and yet they proclaim my glory among the nations. And he's gathering them all together again at this banquet. And at the end of the gospel, we have something similar. He says to the person who asked the question, who will be saved? Jesus says that at the end of time, everyone will be gathered together, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the prophets of the kingdom, and you yourselves cast out people from the north, from the south, east, west, all that will come together. That's an interesting point. But what I really want to talk about is this reversal of fortunes and this saying that Jesus gives to, or that Jesus has in the parable to the question, who will be saved? Or will only a few people be saved? I think that this is one of probably the most terrifying gospels.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not, it appears in the other gospels as well in different forms, but I want to take seriously what's said in the gospel, because Jesus says that, to strive to enter through the narrow gate, for many, I tell you, will attempt to enter, but will not be strong enough. After the master of the household has arisen and locked the door, then you will stand outside knocking, saying, Lord, open the door for us. He will say to you in reply, I do not know where you are from. And you will say, we ate and drank in your company, and you taught in our streets. And then he will say to you, I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, all you evildoers. So, you can kind of ease your conscience and say, well, God knows everything, right? Well, he's not only all-knowing, he's all-present. So, of course, he knows who you are. And he knows who you are because not only, again, does he know all things, but you're actually in him. And because he knows himself and you're in him, he knows you eternally. But that doesn't really, I think, answer the existential impact of this.
Right.
Of God saying, I do not know where you are from. So Luke uses it's characteristic of him to have a theoretical question that Jesus, turns into an existential challenge. And we've seen this before, I think, in our Sunday readings. Peter asks about, who is this parable for us?
Right.
And Jesus doesn't really answer the question. And then what's the other one?
Who is our neighbor?
Who's our neighbor? Yeah, there it is. So who's my neighbor? And then he still doesn't really answer it. So what Jesus gets at in all the Gospels, or in all these kind of questions, and in ours today, is it's a personal challenge to act in such a way as to be one who is saved. Mm-hmm. So it's to strive. But I guess it's a strive to be known by God. But what does that mean, to be known by God?
Right. So setting this up again, it's like when I frequently hear this gospel, you think, at least to like ease your mind, you'd be like, okay, so Christ is obviously talking about like bad people over there and how they think that they're in. And when they come to Christ at the end of time, he's going to say, I reject you because you thought you were holy, but you're not. And that's about those sinners over there. But the challenge is like, well, okay, so who is he talking about? Like, who will be saved? And again, Christ is challenging us to kind of break frame and be like, we're not going to be presented with a list of who's in and who's out. But you always act as if you are on the precipice of not being known by God. That's the better way to frame this, and then start to move so that you can always seek to be known by God, as opposed to have the assurance and the kind of false rest, like we've talked about before, of thinking that, no, I'm the saved one, and then those people over there, they're going to find out.
Mm-hmm. Well, the word he uses here, the strive and struggle, has an athletic term to it, or athletic kind of background. And in the Greek, it's used in the present, so it's to continually strive. It's not just one kind of burst of striving.
Yeah, it's not a sprint.
Right. And then you're good. So as you said, it's to be one who continually strives because they're on the precipice, or they're striving for a very narrow spot.
Right.
So you can never kind of rest easy. And even the imagery that he uses in the gospel is one of rest, I would say. We ate and drank in your company.
Right. So
we rested in your company. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it was probably a restful meal. Mm-hmm. And we thought, therefore, since we were in your company, we would make it. It's not exactly that they're people who thought they were holy. I almost think it's people who were unaware of who was even in their presence. So it's not those who were striving in the wrong way, but it's people who perhaps were not striving at all. I mean, I think you could probably make it multiple layers. It's sure. People who were maybe striving the wrong way, people who thought they were holy, sinners. All the whole category. But it's clearly those who were in some sort of contact with Jesus that he's using the parable for. Yep. So it can't be, well, the really, really bad people who don't even bother. It's like, well, these are just people who are somewhere on the inside of Jesus' company, but yet still will be locked out of the banquet.
Yeah, that's a scarier thought, because then it really like shakes you existentially, being like, well, I presume I'm within Christ because I'm a member of his church, etc. Am I one of those people? And that's like that. Maybe that's what that's a good place to be. Mm-hmm. To be like always assume that you might be.
Yeah. That's it's a good examine of again striving to remain in true company or in true union with God, which is I think where we want to go. But I want to talk about this idea of, I guess, like being in the presence of Christ, and would like to use a little bit of Gabriel Marcel and his, I guess, existentialism phenomenology, the idea of presence and absence, inattention, unavailability. And he says that from a certain point of view, when we think about unbelief, we often think about it as a conscious rejection or a refusal to believe. But he says that it can take a form of inattention. And it's not inattention that one is distracted necessarily, or that one is daydreaming, but it's more fundamental or more existential, that it's a turning a deaf ear, really. That there's an inner life that you're being called to. There's a voice within you calling you out to this deeper union, and yet you are kind of asleep, he says to it. That the inattentive man is one that really needs to be woken up by something. And sometimes this does happen. Sometimes, the inattentive man is brought to attention through, a powerful experience or through the witness of a saint, to which he says, saints are our greatest testimony, because of that ability to take people from not paying attention to paying attention. So it's perhaps these people who are in the company of Jesus, right? They're eating with him. We'll just, kind of take the metaphor literally.
Yeah.
But yet they're not paying attention. They're inattentive to who's in front of them.
Right. When they say we ate and drank in your company and you taught in our streets, there's no indication that they were listening.
Yeah, exactly. And if we connect this idea of inattention to presence, it's like quite clearly we've all had the experience of talking to someone who's not there. They're clearly somewhere else. Like they're not in your presence. And of course, at one level analysis, you say, well, they are in your presence. They're literally physically there. But that's not what we mean. Right. When we say someone's, no one's home.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what Marcel is saying with inattention is you are there, but you're not there. And so Christ preached this word to them, but yet it never took root. It never actually produced the correct response or, the metanoia, the conversion, in order to be the one who continually strives.
Right.
And not just, talking to somebody, but I think this can happen to literally anyone who goes to church or mass. It's like you hear the words of the gospel over and over again, and they just kind of wash over you. Yeah. I think that's a form of inattention, is that you don't allow the words of Jesus to penetrate into your deepest center.
If you were going to take an outside perspective and say, well, here's a chronological timeline of what I did today. I went to church, so that's good. And that's it. So a top-down view of that shows that you were there and you ate in his presence, but you were not paying attention. That's kind of irrelevant to whether or not your self was focused on the right thing at that time. And that I feel like that's such an overlooked aspect. I mean, even the way we talk about attention is we say pay attention. That there is a sacrifice involved of it costs something to focus your gaze on a thing and not other things. And insofar as you do that, that's the type of world that is revealed to you. So it's if you're at church or you're praying or, whatever, and your mind goes other places, that's what you're offering sacrifice to. That's what your attention is being paid to. And maybe that's out of your control because you're distracted, but this is where the whole seeds on rocky soil and the thorns and whatever, this is what the things that come for your attention, it is your job to till that soil so that to make sure that is removed.
Yeah. And I think we can think about this in multiple ways. Just think about how valuable it is when someone pays attention to when you speak to them. The different ways in which they let you know that they're listening to you. And you walk away thinking that, almost in a sense, like a crude sense, that they did a service for you.
For sure.
Like
Yep.
it cost them something to pay attention to you, and hopefully you're thankful for that. When you don't usually thank your friends for hanging out because you could have done anything else.
For sure.
But thank you for spending time with me. I think also it's important. St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila say that when you go to prayer, the first thing you should do is recollect yourself, to recollect yourself.
That's right.
So bring in all your faculties, all, your will, your intellect, all the distractions, try to bring them in, like rein them in, and focus on prayer, what you're about to do. And I think the same thing can happen at church or mass, which is kind of, it's understandable to be distracted, especially, like yourself, you have 6 children. There's a lot to think about. That before mass, if you take a moment to recollect all your thoughts and say, I am in the presence of the Lord.
Right.
I need to listen. I need to pay attention. And so I guess I'm trying to get at a deeper point than just, well, there's people who go to church and it doesn't change their life.
Right.
They're
not listening to the readings.
Right. Yeah. They're not listening to the readings. Or there's some famous, it's not like a meme, or I've seen it in meme form. Somebody said, going to church doesn't make you any more of a Christian than standing in a garage makes you a car.
Uh-huh.
Kind of, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you think you're a Christian because you go to church, but it hasn't changed your life. It's like, no, I'm trying to get more to an existential level of it's not that you're just not listening. It's actually your interior is unavailable, because distractions happen, and sometimes they happen even against your will. And that's something you have to fight through over, during the span of mass is your mind drifts and it comes back, drifts, it comes back. This is, again, like an unconscious unbelief more deeply than, like I said, than just not paying attention.
Yeah, if we, I definitely see the point you're trying to make and how it's not just pay attention to the readings next time you go to church. I think it would be helpful to let's move away from the religious aspect of this and just move to a more secular, practical view to see, like we were saying, how attention is actually, what attention is doing, the value we place when other people give us attention. I mean, social media knows this. It's like the whole economy is that there's something deep in the person that wants to give attention and needs attention. Again, this is, you pay attention, so it's a type of sacrifice of your inner self to be in relationship with another, right? You can't just be in the same room as your spouse and say, we're developing a relationship. So you pay attention to them so that you know them. And if you don't do that, if you say, well, I mean, we raised kids together and, I just went about my day and you went about yours, she could say to you, if you're a husband, your wife could say to you, I do not know where you are from, because you have not paid attention to the point of offering your inner self to be in a relationship for a long period of time and to continue to strive at that so that you have this thing now between you, which is your relationship. And that's what Christ is getting at, is this is what it costs to know a thing, period, anything, but particularly God, is that it costs yourself and to cast off the distractions from other things you could be paying attention to in order to be in relationship with. And that's not the same as just being in the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about, the stories I've heard about divorce and such like that. And at the end of the marriage, there's so often the word stranger is used.
Yep.
Like, oh, we're like strangers to each other. And you say, but you lived in the same house.
Right.
You raised children together, like you said. And it's like, yeah, but that's not, clearly proximity is not enough.
Yeah.
And I think that is what Jesus is getting at through your examples, is just being in my company does not ensure anything. It doesn't, the master of the household may not know where you're from still. Right. There has to be this interior paying attention to and openness to be in a relationship. And the more I think about it, attention is so incredibly valuable. It really is. I mean, again, you have six kids. How many times are they basically say, pay attention to me. Yeah. look at me, look at this thing, look at what I'm doing, and how valuable it is when you do that.
Right.
Or, conversely, for a lot of people, when they feel like they're not being paid attention to, on whatever level it is, physically, emotionally, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. To know and to be known is like the fundamental like drives of humanity.
Right. Right. And so the other aspect we've kind of talked a little bit about is this unavailability. So paying attention or not paying attention, but also availability and unavailability. And Marcel says this unavailability is ultimately rooted in some measure of alienation. And he uses an example of, he says, I'm told about some misfortune to which I'm asked to sympathize. And I understand what I'm told. In theory, he says, I admit that the sufferer deserves sympathy. In fact, it's, even reasonable. And I offer sympathy. But he says, I offer it with my mind.
Right.
That there's something deeper that doesn't really get to me. And so it's sort of an intellectual intellectual apprehension that sympathy is deserved, and it should be given. But that's it.
Yeah, I punched it into the calculator and it says that you deserve sympathy.
Yeah, and he says that I recognize it as like case 1002 of sympathy.
Right.
It's like you just kind of like logged away, like, yep, sorry. And to some extent, this is understandable because I feel like, now we're so connected. You hear so many horrible stories that there is some level that, not everything can hit you the same way.
For sure.
I think that's, reasonable. It's not that you can't sympathize with someone you've never met, but it's going to be very different than those in your inner circle.
Well, that's why it's important to like curate your life in that way.
Yeah.
To like separate yourself. Like don't like read everything on the news all the time because you do only have so much space and availability. And so you want to make sure you offer that. You pay attention to the right things in the right place.
Right.
I mean, like I didn't pay attention to my kids, but you see what happened across the world and freaking Israel and Gaza. Like sometimes you got to pay attention to the right things at the right time. Or you should always do that. But my point is that you only have so much. And so that availability is a precious resource.
And I think with Marcel, he says that if you do flip it, you have more sympathy for someone you've never met than you do for your own children, that sometimes there'll come a time where there's an encounter or an experience that you have that breaks that framework. He says that this ego typology, what is it?
Typography?
Typography.
You
That's
have it
the
written
word.
here, yeah?
I was trying to think of the word, but there it is. And that framework is broken down because of something that's able to actually kind of cut through this framework that you've created for yourself. And I think, as you said, if you do flip this, there may come a time when someone in your own circle is actually able to break through and say, this is what you're supposed to be paying attention to. This is the availability you're supposed to have. And I think that's hopefully what the gospel is supposed to do for us that we hear every Sunday is it's supposed to cut through your frameworks and open you up to a different kind of availability.
Right.
A deeper availability.
Yeah, I think of the that like heat map graph of like the left versus right of like what they care for. That kind of problem. That's not exclusively on the left. It happens everywhere, but it is a problem that, again, if you do want to know and be known, there is this kind of instinct to care, but you have an unavailability to the lower circles of your life, like you, spouse, kids, friends, family, like you're kind of building out a hierarchy. You're a little bit alienated from that. But then you really care about what's going on in politics. You really care about what's going on geopolitically. There's less of a cost to doing that, right? There's less of an offering of oneself because you can't actually know what's happening at a deep level versus your children asking for your attention. And so you kind of move your attention up the ranks because it doesn't cost you as much. and you're comfortable there, and you kind of have a little buffered self being like, yeah, I don't pay attention to the happenings of my family, but I'm really concerned about politics because it's easier existentially. Because it's scary to have that suffering or the struggle, the call for sympathy and empathy internally, because then it's like things are not okay at home, and that's a bad feeling. Like sometimes you really have to sit with that, and it's dark, but then that's how you make progress. Or the alternative is to be like, phew, it's all fine. This is where the problem is, up here. And then you can kind of stay away from it.
Yeah, I think that gets right to the core of what Marcel is trying to say is it's going to be sacrificial.
That's right.
To open yourself up.
Yep.
And it's easier to either not open yourself up or open yourself up in a way that I guess only lets a little bit in. Again, like, you've opened up your mind enough.
Yep.
But you haven't made a sacrifice of anything too costly in your interior. So I do care about all these other issues because they are problems in the world. Maybe they're, legitimate problems, and again, deserve legitimate sympathy. But it's easier to admit those.
It's harder to figure out how to pay attention than what to pay attention to. I feel like, this is a little bit on the flip side of the, scarcity of attention, but it's like, well, should you not care about those other things? It's like, no, you should. Of course you should. But the question is how and in what order. Like you have to always have that like hierarchical viewpoint of the world present. It's like you're assembling the hierarchy, a structure, and everything has to build on one another. I think about even the words that we're using to describe this of like compassion is to suffer with. Alienation is like if you have that unavailability, you become alien, which means that you become foreign. And then Christ says, I do not know where you are from, because you are now associating with things on the exterior, on the outside. And so now you are placing yourself outside of yourself, and you've become alien. And so then when you say, I want to be known, where's the center? It's like, I don't know where you're from, because you've alienated yourself.
That's awesome. That was really well put. Well, it's odd that, usually when we think about the Gospels, Jesus identifies with the outsider, the stranger, the alien, those on the periphery. Again, he's a prophetic figure. So he's on the outside. But the Gospel is saying there's some who are first that shall be last, and last shall be first. So there is this flip that's happening, that you were in his company, but now you're the alien. Right. You're the outside. And that those who were deemed outside are now welcome to the banquet. Now they're on the inside. Because even though, according to Isaiah, they had not heard of my fame, they still gave me glory. But there are those who heard of my fame and didn't give me glory. Right. And so they alienated themselves. They made them strangers by not giving me glory.
Right. So the hierarchy you set up for yourself of like, this is the inside, this is the outside, these are who are cast out. It's like, it might turn out that it's completely upside down for you. And that's on you.
Yeah. And that's addressing the question, who will be saved? Right. Or I guess the question is, how many will be saved? And the person is thinking, perhaps all those who are inside will be saved. Right. But Jesus, again, is answering the question in a much different way. It's, again, be the one who is saved, act as in that way, and wherever you are, because it's not a strict condemnation. It's like, obviously, the apostles are in his company,
right,
and they're saved. So it's not a strict condemnation, but it's not saying if you're in the inside, you're going to be out, and if you're out, you're in. But just don't depend upon being in. That's right. That's all I'm saying. But if you are, you can have both. You can be in and saved, but only if you're striving again. Right. So this being in the company, this presence, Marcel again says that the heart of charity is presence. It's the sense of the absolute gift of oneself. And he says that this gift is not an impoverishment of the giver, but it's actually from kind of this this wealth that one has experienced from God that they want to share. So it's not as though I think when we're talking about paying attention, the sacrifice, it's not as though you're giving something up that you'll never return. It's like I lost this thing in sacrifice. It's more of what we were talking about with Abraham. It's you go to sacrifice Isaac, but in fact you keep Isaac. So you give away your attention and to be in presence with this other person, but you don't lose yourself in that process.
Yep. The difference between the believer and unbelief is to believe that you're going to share that attention, which is, in the sense of charity, would be the love of the Trinity in you. That spirit, you share that spirit with somebody else in hope, in a kind of believing actualization that they will return that spirit and you will enter into that spirit together in that atmosphere. And that's how you believe that you're going to receive that attention back. Not in an egotistical way, that you're going to share in the same spirit.
Right. The you're paying attention, and you're paying attention because the other person is paying attention to you.
Yeah, that's right.
So like I said, you're sharing in this spirit, and this attention that we're talking about right now is attention to Christ and to God. So therefore, somebody who is always paying attention to you. So you might say, well, in a human relationship, maybe the person's not paying attention. So well, we're assuming here that whatever the presence of the other is, that person is speaking to you. They're trying to communicate something to you, and so hopefully. I think to communicate requires attention.
Right.
I think that's kind of a given.
And also in the fallen world, that's exactly what sin is. It's like missing the mark, right? It's like, so if the person receiving your attention does not offer it back perfectly in the best way, they have missed the mark in their attention, and that's the fallen world we're in.
Yes, right.
But that's different than Christ.
Yes, yeah. It's like this is somebody who is, again, preached in your streets, as the gospel says, someone who dined with you, and so clearly was trying to communicate something to you that you should have paid attention to, and should have given your full, your full self to. Something else that Marcel brings up is, which is connected to this kind of gift of the self, is detachment. And he says there's the detachment of the saint and the detachment of the spectator. And the detachment of the saint, he says, comes from the core of reality. And whereas the spectator is just the opposite. So the saint says is actually detached, and therefore is participating in the highest form of participation. But the spectator is someone who detaches to move back, to move out of participation. And I think we can use detachment either, literally, kind of with the things of the world, or again, what we've been trying to talk about, this interior detachment. Are you detached from reality? Therefore, a spectator, things just kind of happen and you're watching? Or are you detached so that you may have a greater form of participation in the person, in the presence of the person you're with?
Yeah, that just reminds me of Cartesianism. That kind of spectator view, the dualism of the separation of body and soul, of okay, so this person in their body here is suffering, and I should, as a spectator, suffer with them and offer empathy, so I'm going to do that. As some sort of mechanical bot. Sounds a little dualistic, of you've separated the logic from the embodiment, and you're trying to calculate empathy. You just don't do that. Mm-hmm. Versus the detachment, like you said, of the saints, where it's you detach from the worldly things, you detach from everything being the resting point of your attention, that your attention is always moving up into Christ, and therefore nothing is, stopping you in that process. Mm-hmm. And that's different than just being like, let me see it from an outside perspective. It's like once you move outside of the center, you've alienated yourself.
Right.
Then all the problems happen.
Right. And now you're viewing the church, mass, this, whatever it is, prayer, God, theology, scripture, now is an object.
Right.
As opposed to the mode of the Christian is actually embodiment.
Right. We say like Holy Mother Church, body of Christ, not as like a cute metaphor. Like these are like real realities that it's like better to frame the church as mother than it is than to frame it as building. And there are like existential realities to why that's a more real description than the brick and mortar that built this church.
One thing that I want to work on throughout this podcast is this idea of the theology of disclosure that Robert Soskolowski writes about. And it's really this idea that through phenomenology, metaphors become literal because of how they actually appear. And now I think you and I are given to mystical interpretations of scripture, so we love metaphor. But there is a sense in which the literalness is actually more terrifying than than just the metaphor. Again, that's what I'm trying to say about this idea that God does not know who you are, literally.
Right.
Not just, again, it's a metaphor that you haven't been baptized, or you are not in grace, or you don't go to mass, so God doesn't know you. It's like, no, there's actually this literal sense that you have become an alien, even to God.
Right.
Which, again, God knows everything, and he doesn't know you. That's bad.
Right.
That's really bad. But it's connected to this idea is problem and mystery that Marcel talks about, and phenomenology also talks about, at least Christian phenomenology. I haven't surveyed all phenomenology, so I couldn't tell you. But so you have a problem, which is something outside of oneself that can be objectified. You can see it as an object, but then the mystery is something which you cannot detach yourself from. So I think this is also the difference. The saint sees reality as a mystery, something to be a part of, to be embodied, whereas the spectator sees it all as something I can move out from.
That's right.
And so the mystery of the body of Christ, the mystery of the church as mother, is something to be lived in, is because it's literal. Like the church literally is your mother.
Right.
And not just, again, like a fun metaphor. It's something you're actually a part of, and I can't just step back and examine.
Yeah, that's right.
This understanding of attention as something to be present in is to be also like a participatory sense. Again, that I'm present to a mystery. I'm present to something that I'm actually a part of. And when I go into a mode of inattention, that's actually unnatural. I'm now trying to make mystery a problem,
right? And
say it's something that I can observe and not live.
It has so many ramifications, like more broadly. I'm thinking back again, like a relationship with the spouse, of like if you sit there and try to calculate what is it that your wife needs from you, the type of attention she needs, and like list it out. Like, I just need to spend 15 minutes with you in the morning, and then, you need me to help the kids, you want me to play with them, blah, blah, blah. And that's what's going to make a good relationship. It's like, if you're framing your spouse as a problem to solve, you're already in the wrong world. And it's the same, the simple analogy of like, if you want to pin down a butterfly to observe it and to calculate it, you have to kill it, right? So like, seeing it alive and letting it live is the mystery you're called to participate in order for it to be an alive, living thing you're in relationship with. So you can't pin down the type of attention you need to give to your spouse and just articulate that, and then that's it, and you just punch it into the calculator. And I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but I've frequently thought of like, how easy would it be in this day and age to like have an auto subscription to like flowers delivered to my wife, like on Mother's Day or Valentine's Day, her birthday, just let it come in. And it's like, is that the calculation that is required for a relationship? That flowers get delivered to our house on Valentine's Day? Like, well, that's the wrong frame. The idea is that I'm paying attention. It costs me something to spend the time in the middle of February to go out and buy flowers for my wife because I love her. That's not a calculatable thing, or else it's reduced. Then I become alienated from my wife. And she's like, thanks for the, charge on the credit card for the flowers.
Right.
It's just the wrong frame.
Because it was kind of unconscious.
Exactly.
Really. Like you were able to just put it out. Like, it's all taken care of. I don't have to.
And all of these are supposed to be signals that I am offering. I'm being available. My inner self is available to pay attention to my spouse. Right. That is really what I'm called for. Every, 15th of February.
I was thinking about what makes what makes something a mystery and what makes something a problem, and maybe how we can differentiate the two. And there's some obvious examples, but I think what you said about living, it has to be a living reality, I think, is what makes something a mystery.
That's right.
And because the classic example, what's a problem, is math or something like that. It's like, well, math is not alive. In fact, it would be, pretty sure, for scholastics to be categorized as a being of reason. It's something that doesn't really exist in reality. There's no two.
Yeah.
But also it does. That's what kind of makes it a weird category. Is grammar is real. Math is real, logic's real, but it doesn't. Yeah. There's no syllogism walking around. It's not like a thing. Right. So it doesn't have that living reality. Whereas your marriage and your wife is a living reality. Right. So it can participate in mystery, and I think we can apply this to God. It's like, is God a living reality, and therefore something that you are involved with, or is God a problem? And therefore something you can pin down? Is it something kind of dead? Right. That is just kind of a mental examine, as opposed to something that requires my availability and attention in the deepest sense? Is it, this something that's actually asking me to be in relationship with it? That's right. And only by being in relationship will I be known and not considered from somewhere else. I don't know where you're from.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's, in the end, when God says, I do not know you, I do not know where you're from. We have this experience in a literal sense. St. John on the Cross says that we feel as though, kind of in the dark night, that God has abandoned us. But that's just a feeling, really. Because God can't abandon you. And that's partly why the theological virtues are so important in the dark night of the soul, and they become so heightened and purified, is one no longer relies on philosophy, theology to a certain extent, to guide them, and these old images and conceptions of God. One is now relying purely on faith. And my faith tells me that God cannot abandon me, even though I feel it. And it's a weird existential situation. Both Augustine and St. Anselm begin their works with this kind of meditation on that God is present and absent. It's like, I call upon God to enter my soul, but if he were not in my soul, I would not be alive. Right. So how can I call upon God to be with me if he's always with me? It's kind of that weird situation. Yeah. So in the end, when God says, I don't know you, it's really this idea that you've lived as if I was absent. That's right. And now you find yourself absent from me. Right. And why is, St. John the Cross also asks, why is it so hard to find God if he's in your soul? Right. But yeah, that's the greatest journey the hardest journey is to find God who's but always present to you.
Right. It's important to realize that we're the ones that are not eternal and ever consistent, right? Mm-hmm. And so if God is, then that means this alienation, this where is God, is always related to our disposition towards him. And so that's where you get that tension of like, well, if God is always here, but I feel like I don't have him in my heart and I'm welcoming him into my heart, that means I'm in a disposition in which I've alienated myself.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, but the world does reveal itself to you by your orientation and by your intentions. You know, God is around every corner if you're looking for him. That's right. But if you are inattentive, then God will never really reveal himself. I think it's a Flannery O'Connor story, or it's a story she relates about somebody who wrote a friend of hers and asked, how do I find God? Or like basically, what's a good like argument for God? And her friend said, serve the poor, or something, something along those lines. Or it was like, give alms. I think that was his give alms. And I think that's the correct answer. Again, is God a problem? And therefore, if you give me a philosophical pursuit, I can pin it down and I can find the answer. Right. Or is God asking you to get involved in a relational mystery? That's right. That you're like, that requires your embodiment and your orientation,
right?
And your attention.
You to pay attention.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Give alms, pay attention.
Yes. Right. Yeah. You have to. There has to be something that's given from your core.
That's right.
As opposed to the periphery of I guess your mind and philosophical pursuits, but actually a whole existential way of being.
Yeah, I'm reminded of last week's readings from Hebrews towards the end, where he says, "In your struggle against sin, you have not resisted to the point of shedding blood." That just kind of internal core. It's like you have to pay from the core. Mm-hmm. Like this is not just like pay something. Mm-hmm. This is so primordial. This is like the sacrifice of Cain and Abel. Like this is how like low this goes. Of like this is just how you pay attention, the quality and supremacy of our attention as human beings. It's so central.
Just to briefly touch on that point and the second reading. We're still in Hebrews. I think this is the last time we're going to be in Hebrews, but at least for these Sundays. But it's talking about training and discipline. So there's kind of an interesting connection with the idea of striving. So there's a lot of athletic imagery. I think Dionysius talks about Jesus as like your physical trainer. Essentially, he uses like all that imagery. But it says here that all discipline seems a cause not for joy but for pain. Yet later it brings the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who are trained by it. So I think here, again, it's actually about how things appear to your orientation. Is if you see God as a problem, as something external to you, then the pain and the discipline is meaningless. But Hebrews says earlier that you should keep in mind this exhortation, my son, do not disdain the discipline of the Lord. For whom the Lord loves, he disciplines. He scourges every son he acknowledges. So endure your trials as discipline. God treats you as sons. For what son is there for whom the Father does not discipline? So he's saying if God is abstract, then again, this is meaningless. But if you view yourself in relationship, then this is not a discipline for pain's sake, but actually to produce holiness. That's right. So how do you view God? Is it this Father's son? Are you in relationship? Are you known? Does he know where you're from because you're his son? Or this is just abstract again? Right. A trial not of discipline, but of sick vengeance or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then towards the end, strengthen your drooping hands and your weak knees, that what is lame may not be disjointed but healed. It's like you have, again, like the members of your body, yourself, your hierarchy in which the world lays itself out to you, may be disoriented, and you have to recollect those so that they don't become completely cut off and disjointed and alienated. Because then when you identify with that too much, then you become alienated.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole point is that reorientation and that healing.
Right. Is endure your trials as discipline.
Right.
Or endure your trials as, or I guess, do not endure your trials as meaningless. Yeah. So how have you oriented yourself to see these things revealed? That your orientation will, your existential orientation will bring about a revelation of how you're supposed to see these things from God.